What can we expect for Bitcoin in Q4? I'm Caroline Bowler. Crypto Corner starts now. And welcome to Crypto Corner, presented each week by BTC Markets, where each episode we explore the latest in crypto market trends. In this episode, I am catching up with Matt Willemsen, Head of Research and Content at Collector Shift, to discuss the factors positioning Bitcoin for a potential strong performance in the fourth quarter. Matt, thank you so much for coming along to join us today.
Absolutely, Caroline, my pleasure.
Can I actually open with that then? So, what is it about Bitcoin's, so far across 2024 that makes you feel confident about any performance in Q4 of this year?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is really the elimination of all these headwinds that Bitcoin has seemingly had throughout 2024. Just as there was some momentum in the market, there was always this new headline that was coming out about supply overhangs. Mt. Gox redistributions, as I'm sure you must have covered, was by far the biggest one that spooked the market. Also had events like Germany selling roughly $3 billion worth of Bitcoin, and other sort of overhangs related to other bankruptcies dating back to 2022 that all sort of were filtering through the market and rinsing through. And here we are in September 2024, and for the first time in this year, I can actually confidently say that none of these sort of headwinds are really a factor anymore in Bitcoin's short-term outlook, which is definitely a major reason why all of a sudden I'm optimistic through year end.
And certainly we're still seeing some of that volatility in recent days and weeks kind of come through. We've seen some price movements and rebounds on Bitcoin itself, but it certainly isn't, as you say, the reduction in those headwinds as we move into the final quarter of this year. Although, the big macro questions are still to play out as we sit here recording. So it's never a dull moment, I'll give it that much. But with that actually then, this has been a somewhat more muted bull market in our view than we've had in previous years. What's your take on it? How does this current bull market compare to previous ones that we've seen?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a number of factors here, Caroline, and we could sit here for about an hour and go through them all. But I think the biggest ones, having been a full-time analyst through the 2017 sort of hype cycle, and even throughout COVID when the bull market was raging, it's absolutely that perspective to really, I think, notice a lot of really obvious differences between now and those previous ones. The first one that comes to mind is simply the sheer volume of cryptocurrencies now. There are clearly in excess of 10,000 cryptocurrencies, technically speaking, even up into 100,000 plus. But really, back in the day, there were just far fewer, I suppose, altcoin selections out there, and even the concentration of capital, therefore, those attracted. So then we also have other factors as well, such as the macro economy. I think you just can't ignore the fact that discretionary income is a lot muted, a lot lower compared to previous bull markets, and even just appetite for risk, given the higher interest rates as well, is also a big distinguishing factor when you think back to the very low interest rate environments we had in previous bull markets. So that is, I think, is one reason why Bitcoin dominance is so large at the moment. Like Bitcoin, for those unaware, accounts for nearly 60% of the overall cryptocurrency market. And I just think people's appetite for investing in these altcoins are just a lot lower than what they previously were. And I think those macroeconomic backdrop or conditions in terms of cost of living and risk appetite is absolutely a big factor.
I think that's generally a fair assessment. Certainly, when you look at the appreciation in the price of Bitcoin specifically over the past 2 years, coming off its very low baseline at the height of the bear, and then we saw that turnaround kind of come through in Jan 23, and it's been on. I mean, in something of a tear in terms of its price increase since then. But we certainly haven't seen the same buoyancy, dare I say, FOMO trade come into the market over that time. It seems to have been a more gradual appreciation rather than rather than some of the hype that we've seen, which also does, suggest, there is a baseline of support being baked into that price of Bitcoin at this point in time. And, only time itself will tell. You can't put in those guarantees, but it certainly does suggest it, given how long we're looking at this particular price range that we're currently sitting in here in September 24. But it will be, as you say, an interesting run through to the end of the calendar year and into next year. And, obviously you would have seen it too, how the price and liquidity plays out over the holiday season. Obviously this coming in December and January is holidays both here in Australia and in the Northern Hemisphere with their end of year celebration. So we'll see how that all pans through. But moving away a bit from Bitcoin and kind of moving on to those altcoins that you spoke about, one of the big stories over the past 12 months has actually been Solana, which has been compared to Ethereum and varyingly been called an Ethereum killer and an alternative to. And certainly we've seen a lot of narrative in the industry talk about Solana. Would you be able to give us a comparison for our viewers between the Solana network and Ethereum as well?
Yeah, sure. It's easiest to go back in terms of, bring it back to even Bitcoin, really, 2008. That came along, the first sort of, what we now know as blockchains. All of a sudden, Ethereum sort of came along in 2014, and it was the first blockchain sort of designed to handle what are known as smart contracts, which Bitcoin can technically do, but it's just not optimized for it. Sure, it was a great innovation, and it spurred a lot of, creation of different applications of blockchains, and a lot of these decentralized finance applications and all of that can really only work thanks to Ethereum and what that pioneered and brought to the industry. And now we have a bunch of different, builders and developers out there who are challenging, Ethereum's architecture and thinking, hey, we can actually deliver a much more performant blockchain, noting why do we even need a more performant blockchain? For those unaware, Ethereum has had performance issues over the past years, and people still question whether it is actually capable of, quote unquote, bringing the masses or having enough activity or being resilient enough to bring on, millions and millions of users at once. So we have the likes of Solana, which are now, again, built differently to really try to keep it simple. And they optimize for, faster transactions with a much lower and cheaper transaction fee, which Ethereum has historically, struggled with. So Ethereum has its own roadmap for, solving these scalability issues, which it has been improving on in recent years and continues, and it will continue doing so, in my opinion, throughout the rest of the 2020s and beyond. But Solana brings, a new generation, of how to build and construct a blockchain. And so far, it is, by far the leader of that new wave of blockchains. And really, we'll see, I think, the main thing that I'm watching is whether it can spur and bring on a bunch of, differentiated applications and use cases of blockchain technology that Ethereum cannot support.
And I think that's a very good point. As you mentioned, Ethereum brought in with it NFTs, it brought in with it DeFi, it brought in with it whole new areas of applicability for blockchain, and just really took the message out to the masses in a way that Bitcoin itself hadn't previously done. And so, it will be, the gauntlet has been thrown for the likes of Solana, and as you say, described with those new wave projects. But certainly what we've seen has been an increase in building using that Solana blockchain. We've certainly seen more projects are looking beyond just Ethereum and seeing what else is out there, which again, it can only be of a net benefit to the industry broadly, to have that diversification and that investment in alternatives. So certainly is an exciting time. One of the things that crypto in particular is notorious for are our love of industry conferences. And certainly for me, I've spent most of this year on the road, kind of gathering around, attending, global conferences across all of the major all continents. One of the things then that is quite unique, I suppose, are those more project-specific conferences, the likes of ETH Denver and so on. Can you talk about why are those project-specific events so important for investors and potential traders?
Yeah, sure. The industry ones are fantastic for uniting all different stakeholders and people interested in crypto and blockchain technology in general, and they are necessary and will keep going for many years ahead. But these projects and altcoins, as many of them know, a lot of the larger ones that have their own ecosystems of developers, users, entrepreneurs, and even different, I guess, professional investors who are funding different startups in these specific ecosystems, the industry conference don't really give them an opportunity to showcase, I guess, where they've been, their progress they're making, and more importantly, in my opinion, where they're going. So these project-specific conferences are an excellent temperature check, really, on how these altcoins are progressing. So yeah, I've had a look in my calendar, Caroline, and over the next 6 or 7 weeks ahead, between now and the end of October, if you go in on something like CoinGecko and you see the first 50 altcoins or cryptocurrencies, I counted 7 of them that have their main annual project-specific conference, but in the next 6 or 7 weeks. So I'm expecting that to provide an excellent, as I said, temperature check on how these altcoins are performing and how, I suppose, the interest in them is in terms of just developers and users. If they don't really have that much to report on, that is a bit of a red flag to me personally. However, on the other side, if there are announcements from not just internal industry, I guess, companies and whatnot, but if there are also traditional companies outside of crypto coming and joining these conferences and presenting even on stage, which we might get to soon with one in particular I'm excited about, that for me is a very encouraging sign, and it's more reason for me and the team at Collective Shift to sort of lean in on these altcoins and cover their progress.
Would you dare to say who it was, the announcement that you're looking forward to hearing, or the speaker that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, Solana Breakpoint in particular. That's the, I suppose, project-specific conference. If you're calling Solana a project, they will be having announcements from PayPal. As far as I'm concerned, PayPal has a booth at the conference in addition to that, and they're also presenting at the conference. So we know PayPal launched their USD stablecoin last year. They expanded to the Solana blockchain earlier this year, and their value and supply of that stablecoin on Solana has been growing immensely, which has been great to see. But now we may see more from PayPal in terms of, well, what next are they doing on Solana? And we've also seen Visa building on Solana this year as well. So they might be one that we may see present as well at Breakpoint, but I'm not too sure on their association or involvement with Breakpoint.
Certainly, the likes of PayPal and Visa don't make these moves just to be speculative. They're certainly not doing it just for attending, just for the fun of it. There's obviously going to be some reasons and hopefully some good news announcements coming through. On that note, I'm afraid we have run out of time again today. Matt, it's been fantastic talking to you, and hopefully we'll get a chance to chat again. Certainly, once all the wave of conferences are over, we can kind of gather together all the different announcements and sift through and see where we can find the value in what we've heard. But in the meantime, I just want to say thank you so much, Matt. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure, Caroline.
Thank you very much. This is Ticker. We'll be right back.
You're watching Ticker. We'll have more in just a few minutes.